Hello, everyone, and thank you and welcome to yet another video of our series. And in this video, we'll be working on case expression in SQL. Now, what exactly is a case expression? A case expression is a conditional expression that allows us to perform conditional logic within our queries. This is a very useful logical expression that we can use to create conditional statements that is sometimes similar to other programs like if statement and if else statement in other programming language. The case expression evaluates a set of conditions and return a result based on the first condition that happens to be true. So it is going to evaluate a particular expression that you give. If that expression evaluates to be true, it will return it. And now, the case expression have two parts, two different types. One of them is a simple part, which only takes just few conditions, is not a lot, and you know the condition, so you target it and you specify it. But the search piece of the case expression, all it does, it just ensures that it goes into the table and search for the condition that you are giving to it. Without further ado, I'm going to go into SQL and we'll walk through a particular problems to kind of like dive deep and understand what we are doing. So for that, we're going to write a simple query. Now, this is how it evaluates. First of all, I'm going to first pick up my database where I want to write the code. I'll say use the Polins database and I say go to pick or select that particular database. I check it and our database has been confirmed. Now, using these questions that is given to us here, we're going to answer some of those um, search and simple method. Our first question here is for us to display the street address, the street type, and a column to show when the type of address, to show the type of address that we have. And the condition that we want to check upon is that if the address type name is billing, we want to display payment. If the address type name is home, we want to say residential. If the address type name is like office, this one is name. If it is like office, we want to display work address. Anything other than the three that we have mentioned, we want to say it is a location. So we're going to use the simple method to trap this because we have specific items that we can get. So if I come down here, my first thing that I would do is to call my select because it looks like I have two tables involved. The two tables that I'm seeing is address. Okay, we'll just walk through it. I'll take that back. So if I go to address table and run the address table of this database, I see a street address, and that is one of the questions that they ask us, street address. But I do not see a street type, sorry, address type. I do not see an address type, and I do not see address type name. So let's go into the address type table. So if I go select star from the address type table, and if I run this code, I can see that I have an address type ID and an address type name. So these two tables are what I need to work with. So I can come down here and begin to write my join. So I will call the first table AD type, AD, AD type, and I'm going to do an inner join to call the address table, and I'll give the address table I'll give it, as, let's just give it AD. I'll give it AD. I'll put an S here. And I want to join this table on, remember, I want to join this table on the ADT dot ADT type dot, I'm going to join it to the address type ID equals, on the address table, I'm going to join it to the address type ID. First thing first, I'm going to run the code to see what we have, and we have all this information. Now we need to pinpoint this column that they want us to return. So first of all, I'm going to get the street address, and they want me to return the street type, which will be the name. And if I run this code, I can see, okay, I didn't put a comma here. If I run this code, I can see the address, the street address, and the type. Now they want me to create a column that will capture this information that they gave us. So I'll come down here and I'll put a comma and I will say case. Because I want to use the simple form, I want to try to use the simple form for this exercise. And to use the simple form, I just have to call one piece of the column at a time. So I can come down here and say name, name. And it's doing this. So the best thing to do when you open your case, you want to end the case. So I'm going to end this as I'll call this guy, we can just call it address, ah, address, address cat. Then inside of here, because of we're using the simple case, we're going to do case and call the column name. And when we call the column name, I can come down here. I say, when, watch how we do it. When I say, when the first thing they say when billing. When billing, then they want me to display payment. Payment. So far, so good. I'm going to run this piece just one at a time. So just because I'm building a case, don't worry about all this. I will explain when we get there. But then the next one is, they say when, remember, I'm not calling the column name over and over again. I say when the next thing is home. Then I say, they say when it is home, I should say it is residential. The next one, the when, the next one they said when like home, no office. When like office. Then they say work address. This guy. So I can come down here. I say work address. So the like will probably not work the with the simple method because the like searches for something. It does not look for it does not pinpoint any specific information like home, like the like, if you know, if you remember the like from our search criteria, the like is always used to search for something. So we're going to flip it a different way. If we go into the address type table for now and we look at this, we're gonna tweak it. The thing home, this and this, the next one is primary, right? So we're going to flip it a different way. So I'm going to say when primary, when primary, then we're going to say main location. Main location. Then other than that, we can now say else. We can say else. We call the office. We call it work address. This guy. So now I can come down here and call it a work address. So basically, if I run this code, I should still capture all the information that they are looking for. So let's see. Then we'll come back and explain it. So if I run this code, when we are home, we have residential. When we are primary, we have main office. When we are, so the office that was having problem, that's fine for the office looking one. Office. Okay, I didn't see office. I didn't see. Okay, main office is called the work address. So even though the question flip it a different way, because of this like is not used for the simple, but it is used for a search, we kind of like flip it and force the hand of the code to get us the result. So that is how we were able to use this. And this is how the simple method works. We call the case, we call the column once, and in all our when, we call the specific conditions that we need, and we now call what we want to display. But the search method is a little bit different. The search method will call the column every specific time that we want to capture a particular condition. So this is how it works. Let's take this question for example. They want us to write a query to retrieve the first name along with a column that indicates whether they have any diagnosis. So if they have a diagnosis, we want to record yes. If they don't have a diagnosis, we want to record no. So with this, we can see that there are two tables, a patient table and a diagnosis table. So I'm going to call the two tables direct from, I'll call the DBO, call the DBO dot patients table, and I'm going to call the next one from, I'll say DBO dot the diagnosis table. And this two table contains the informations that we're looking for. So in our first table, we're going to run this guy. When we run it, we can see that we can extract the first name from this. So I'll come down here and pull the first name. I say first name. And from the first name, and I can probably put the ID, but it doesn't matter. Then I want to add or join to the diagnosis table. And for this, I will give my alias to this table as PAT. And I will come down here and I will do an inner join to the DBO.diagnosis table. And I will call this guy as DIA. And I want to join it on PAT.diagnosis ID. Oh, okay, patient ID. And the diagnosis table will have the patient ID. And if I run this code, I can see some information that are there. But I want to see some columns that I can bring alongside with me to this particular table to do some kind of double checking. So now I can come down to this table and maybe I can bring in the diagnosis date. Let's just bring diagnosis date as part of another column that we can pick from the diagnosis table. I say diagnosis date. Now this is how the search method works for the case statement. I will come down here and call a case, and I will come down and end the case. I will end it as, I'll call it has diagnosis. So the case is the beginning of my case expression. The end is the ending of my case expression. It's just like me opening and closing a parenthesis. Then inside of the case, between the case and the end state and the end keyword is where I put my conditions. And if those conditions evaluates to be true, it will return the corresponding result. If those diagnosis evaluates to be false, it will return a different result. So now, what I want to do is that I will bring in the diagnosis ID so that we can see what we are about to capture. So I'll come down here and I'll call the diagnosis ID. Before I write my case statement, let me comment out the case statement out. And then let me run the code and we see what we are trying to capture. So when we run this code, we can see that whenever we have, okay, we need to put the patient ID also. So the patient ID. And we'll do, this should be a left join, not an inner join, because inner join will bring everybody, right? So we want to do a left join to the diagnosis table. And when we do that, and we can bring in the patient ID to just show some kind of comparison of what we're working on. And if I run this code now and I check, I can see that there are some diagnosis ID that are null. That means those patients do not have diagnosis. And those are the capture we want to capture. So I can come down here and uncomment my case statement. And inside of this case statement is where I put my condition. So now I can say something like, when the diagnosis ID is null, then I want to say they don't have a diagnosis. So there's no diagnosis recorded. So I can say this as a no. Else, I will say yes. Else, that means they have a diagnosis. So if I run this now and come down here, I can see this guy have a diagnosis date. So yes, they do have a diagnosis. Has diagnosis? Yes. I come down here, I hit no. Do they have a diagnosis date? No. And diagnosis ID? No. So no, they don't have a diagnosis. So that is how the case search method works. We get the case and end the case. We did not supply the column. The column is always used to search for the record. So we can now go to the next question that looks like this. The next question says we should show the diagnosis name, diagnosis type, the severity of the diagnosis, and alongside with a column that will categorize them as critical if the diagnosis type is severe and non-critical if the diagnosis type is mild, otherwise if it is none. So to do that, first thing first, it looks like we do not have any other table that we need to join to, so we just have this one table. Makes our work a little easier. So if I write a select, I'll first go select star, call the DBO dot diagnosis table, and I run the code. And on this code, now I know I can see the diagnosis ID, diagnosis name, I can see diagnosis, I can see diagnosis type and the severity that we are concentrating on, right? So we can come down here and I put my code and I say, they want me to call the diagnosis name. I call diagnosis name. They want me to call the diagnosis type. I call the diagnosis type. They want me to call the severity of the diagnosis. And I can run this code at this stage to see if things are working normal. And yes, they do. So we can take it next to add other flavor to the code. So now I can call my case to begin my case expression, and I will end it immediately with this end result. And I can call this guy diagnosis at for category. Now, inside of this case, between the case and the end is where I write my logic or my condition. The first thing is that they said I should check for when the severity of the diagnosis, when when is it, yes, the severity of the diagnosis when it equals, when it is severe, When it is severe, then I can say it is critical. Critical. And let's make sure to say when it is severe, we say it is critical. And the next one they said when when the severity when the severity equals, they say when it is mild, when it is mild, we should say it is non critical. Remember, we have this is a string, and remember the way we treat string, we put single quote around that string, and anything string we put a single quote around it. And the last one they said otherwise, I should say and otherwise if none. I think it should say none if otherwise. So I would just say none. So that means they don't have any serious symptoms. So I can say else. I can say none. Else I can say none. This. And now if I run it, we validate and see if it works. When it is mild, it is non-critical. When it's moderate, don't worry about it. It is non. When it is severe, it is very critical. When it is mild, it is non-critical, based on the business question that they give us. And again, the secret here is that we go case to start our case condition. We go end to end our case condition. And at the end of the day, we return the query. The last thing that we want to look at is the last question for our case statement. And this case statement says that we should list the appointment with their IDs and appointment type, the reason for a visit, and the status. And alongside that, we should put a column that will show if the appointment is upcoming or if they have already occurred. And the condition is if the appointment status is scheduled, then it is upcoming. If the appointment status is completed, then it has already occurred. Otherwise, it was canceled. So we can see that we only have one table in this particular problem. So we can come down here and write our select star from our DBO dot appointment table. And if I run this code to verify if all the columns that I need are there, I have appointment ID, I have appointment type, I have the reason of the appointment, I have the status. So now we can go in and begin to plug in those information. The first one is the appointment ID. Appointment ID. The second one is the appointment type. The third one is the reason of the appointment, the reason for the visit. The last one is the status. So if I run this code, I can see clearly that it extracted the required information. Now, moving on from here, I need to add my case statement. I will first of all call my case and I will end the case and I will probably just call this, let's just call it appointment status. Now, I have opened my case and I closed my case and I gave it a name called appointment status. Inside of this guy is where I need to begin to put my conditions together. The first one, they said if the status, so when status equals scheduled. When it is scheduled, then we said it is upcoming. When The next condition that they want us to check, they said when the appointment is completed, we said it has already occurred. So we say when the status equals completed, then if I forgot my when when the status equals scheduled, then not equal to, then it is upcoming. And here, when the status equal completed, then it has already occurred. Then they said, else it was cancelled. Else that appointment was cancelled. And if we run this guy to validate that status, it is scheduled, it is upcoming. It is completed, it has already occurred. There's nothing other than the two that we have. So beautiful, things looks good. And we can see how we were able to use both the search and the simple to find a condition in a logical way. And that will be the end of the video for now. So the case statement, remember again, the case statement is nothing other than a logical expression that we can use to logically express our data in a different form. And there are two types of this. There is a simple and there is a search method. And please don't forget to like the video. I really appreciate your time. Don't forget to like the video, click on the notification bell so that you will know and be notified when I send in another video. And our next video will be working with a derived table. We'll use derived table to pull data from multiple areas, either the derived table or I'm just going to knock off the set operators where we talk about union or union or. Depending on the video, but stick around. On Monday, the next video is coming out. And I want to thank you. This script will be available for you to use when you look when you see on the link down below. Thank you and bye bye.